Tonight we're talking to Michael Ventura, and we're going to discuss biblical cinema tonight, something that I don't know very much about, so I'm very interested in hearing his take on it. So why don't you take us away, Michael?
Okay. Well, the first one I want to talk about just a little is the first one I ever saw, which was a big production called The Robe, which came out in 1953, and I probably saw it in a neighborhood movie theater, like early 1954 or late 53, so I'm 8 years old. And to set the stage, first, it's CinemaScope and Technicolor. So it's the first big, enormous film I've ever seen. Most films then were not in CinemaScope. And most films were, a lot of films, not most, I'd say, but a lot of films were in black and white. And the color on a lot of films, especially by the time they got to the neighborhood theaters, wasn't that great. And you didn't notice it because you never saw color. I never saw color TV until, the late 60s. And you go back to a world where it is not saturated in imagery. You have Life magazine, which is a photographic magazine. You have Look magazine, which is another one. And you get a lot of your imagery from those weekly magazines that were very popular. As I've said, television news basically doesn't exist in 1953. And you get your images from the newsreels you see in the theaters. And so I'm this kid. I think I went with other kids. I don't remember an adult being around, which was not unusual. And I've been in church with my mother, and I got baptized and everything Catholic. Been in church with my aunts, and everything is, there's the bells, and there's the Catholic Church, there's the bells, there's the incense, there's the hushed sense of it. Mostly Italian immigrants and Irish descendants in those churches in New York. And you're supposed to not move. You're supposed to be good. You're supposed to kneel when everybody else kneels and get up when everybody else gets up. It's in Latin. You don't understand it anyway. And so it's very mysterious. And above it all, there's Jesus on the cross. And then in this film, which now I haven't seen it since. This is how this film lives in me. I'm not testifying that this is how the film.
Victor Mature.
But yeah, he was in it. Richard Burton was the star of the film.
Oh, right.
Big starring role.
Right.
And Victor Mature was in it. He won some awards for it, actually, not in America, but elsewhere. And the plot, as I remember it, is Jesus' robe, Christ's robe, falls from him as he's up there, and the soldiers are bidding for it. But what you see, and I think it's in the opening of the film, and friends of mine like Terry Allen and others of my generation remember this as terrifying too. You see the nails go in the hands.
Yeah.
You go, whoa. Because you didn't see much violence. I mean, it was violent. So people get, bloodlessly shot, and you saw people get supposedly punched, but there's crucifixion going on, and you're literally your own witness to it. I don't want to make a big deal of it, but it's, oh my God, and that's what he's supposed to be. It's your God getting. Okay? And so there's resurrection, and the rest of the film kind of goes by in this big color CinemaScope swirl for me, because basically I was terrified, and I stayed terrified. The big thing being that he was all alone. That was our God. That's what they were telling me. And he was all alone. And then this big swirl happened around him that he didn't seem to have much to do with. But, I wasn't intellectualizing anything at the time. I was just feeling. And it was the crucifixion, the way they did the resurrection, and me being very afraid of this sacred thing. it got me interested in biblical ethics. I stayed interested as I got older. I like to go back to the earliest stuff. So, kind of the source material. And you find Alice Guy, whom we talked about a bit, and if you just read her name on the page and you didn't know she was French, you'd call it Alice Guy. Alice Guy, with the most advanced studio in the world in Paris, Gaumont Studio, more than a decade ahead of, technically, of what the U.S. filmmakers were doing. And it's 1906, it's 2 years before D.W. Griffith touched the film camera. Making what, for the time, was quite a long film. It's about almost a half hour. And by comparison, the Great Train Robbery in 1903 that caused such a big sensation in the United States was about 11, 13 minutes, something like that, depending on the print. And so this was a long film. And it just said The Life, Birth, and Death of Christ. That was the title. And it's very respectful. It's very, it's almost all shot in the studio. The sets are very well done. The mime, because that's what it is, a mime, is very respectful, not overdone, kind of sedate for the time. And it's kind of intimate. It isn't the great big scale of things that would come later. That would come, in fact, and this is quite a bit later when you think about it, is the Cecil B. DeMille film, The Ten Commandments, the silent film, in 1923. Now, if you see this film now, and you can see it, it's pretty available, the special effects are incredible. Remember, these guys don't have any of the tools that we are familiar with to do any of these special effects. The parting of the sea, the closing of the sea, and Cecil B. DeMille went through, created the sense of spectacle that we became used to. This is 1923, and he got hundreds of people in the desert. He got real Hasids. He got all kinds of what he thought were genuine touches, but he was really trying to make it genuine. His exaggerated, gargantuan imagination of genuine, but he was sincere and made this an enormous spectacle, the biggest spectacle that had yet been on the screen. And he followed this up, I think it was in 1925, with King of Kings. And again, you have the Bible as spectacle, when really, if you read the stories in the Bible, they're kind of intimate. You don't get the sense of this happened to millions of people.
Yeah.
With the Moses story, it is a very personal story, and then he's leading a large tribe, but a tribe of people, into an immense desert. And if you're just reading the story, it is a pretty intimate story.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the archaeological evidence, is that there really wasn't there's no evidence for like some big empire or David's big kingdom or
Exactly.
palaces or anything like that. They're kind of, it is more intimate. It's like a group of people in tents, basically, right? And
Yes, exactly.
People have made it all fabulous and everything in the past 2,000 years, but the archaeological evidence says that it was very intimate.
Well, one of my hypotheses, let's put it this way, because you can't really have a conclusion to this. I can't prove it, but I think people have made it spectacular in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
I think these epics have looked at have changed how we see the Bible.
Yeah.
Where if you have, and I know I have, it's a very different sense of scene than you get from these epics, and yet these visual epics have made such a deep impression.
Right. And most, like 95% of people have never read the Old Testament, right? And most of the people,
I know an awful lot of Christians who haven't read
yeah,
the Old Testament.
a lot of people that call themselves Christians or Jews even have never read the Old Testament, and yeah, I mean it's pretty amazing.
It amazed me when I got to Texas and the South how much Christianity they got from the pulpit and
Yeah.
not from the book,
Right.
especially not from the Gospels.
Yeah.
I remember having a shouting discussion. It wasn't really an argument with a dear friend of mine in Lubbock, Texas, who insisted that Saint Paul, in my religion, was a Roman, and I said, he says he's a Jew. No, he wasn't a Jew, he was a Roman, and it was just not negotiable. but things bigger than that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, how could you have read the New Testament and not know that? I mean, that's pretty
exactly
amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. If you read the letters of Paul, and if you read the book of Acts, you know it.
Right.
These will happen in large part. Now the Mills King of Kings has a wonderful opening. Mary Magdalene, whom there is no scriptural evidence was a prostitute.
Right.
None at all. And she, basically the church decided she was a prostitute about the year 300, 400, from the beginning, because no matter how you try to cloud Mary Magdalene's story, you can't cloud that she was the first person to see the risen Jesus. And you can't pretend that doesn't mean something. That can't be the only thing by chance that happened in the Bible. And so, at first, there was a whole sect in the first 200 or 300 years after Jesus of Mary Magdalene being the lead apostle because she saw the risen Jesus first.
Mm-hmm.
And that, no doubt, gave the church no end of trouble. And so she became the whore. And DeMille accepts that premise. So you see this royal prostitute in luxury, and she demands to have her chariot brought forth. And the chariot's being filled by zebras. The only trouble is zebras are wild animals. They are not domesticated horses. And when she gets on the chariot, you see the damn thing lurch before they cut away. And there is a very touching small scene in the King of Kings, which I'm always thankful I saw. And so Jesus is, of course Jesus doesn't look like the 5-foot tall, swarthy Palestinian he probably was. So the movies have portrayed him even in 1960 as the blonde Jeffrey Hunter.
Right.
Jesus. And that has repercussions. I mean, that's not a small thing.
Yeah.
But I don't want to dwell too much on that, but come on. But Jesus has done some miracles and this and that, and the crowd is dispersing, and he's healed people. And a little girl comes to him with her broken doll and hands it to him to heal the doll. And as I remember it, the actor looks at the camera with the kind of thing of, what am I supposed to do now? and that's the whole scene.
Yeah.
It's really a lovely touch. Then biblical epics, DeMille kind of loses interest, and with a film called The Sign of the Cross in 1932, which was sort of spoken, until he does the Ten Commandments in 1956. he does again, but in color and CinemaScope and with a lot more money and a lot more people. When they were talking about a cast of thousands, they weren't kidding. And Lenny Bruce had a routine after the DeMille's Ten Commandments came out, which went, Lenny Bruce is saying, I can't really imitate Lenny Bruce, but he's saying to the effect of, look, Moses wants to come back. He wants to come back, but he's embarrassed. I mean, he's saying there, Charlton Heston's 6'8".
Yeah.
I'm 5'2". What am I going to do? They're not going to believe me. But he makes the point that it did create these outsized images.
Yeah.
These exaggerated, gargantuan images that are very hard to take personally. When you read scripture, let's say you're completely not religious and you're not reading it for that, you're reading it for the literature of it, you're reading for the history of it, or you are religious, it's something you find yourself taking personally. It's not on this huge, enormous scale. But you have a film like that that's on that scale, and it's intimidating as hell. What role can you possibly play in this? What can this supersized Moses have to do with you? At least that's part of what I always felt. I always felt diminished by these things. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
And then you get to things like George Stevens. Well, you get to the King of Kings. Now this gets weird in a way with King of Kings. It's 1961. So who's it directed by? Nicholas Ray. Directed Rebel Without a Cause.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Wow.
Who narrates it? Ray Bradbury.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
I'm not kidding.
Huh.
Ray Bradbury narrates. So you have Rebel Without a Cause being narrated by the Martian Chronicles and Jeffrey Hunter playing the blonde, blue-eyed Jesus.
Yeah.
When you step back from it a little bit, it's completely surreal.
Yeah.
What is going on here? and I put that out just as is. I'm not going to make any big generalizations over it.
Yeah.
But we're getting our. You're getting your Jesus from King of Kings. And face it, a lot of people went to the theaters and got their Jesus from King of Kings.
Right.
You're getting your Jesus from first you blonde, blue-eyed, and I have respect for Jeffrey Hunter as an actor.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't think that Jeffrey Hunter did a bad job as Jesus.
No, he did not do a bad job.
And I think he actually took it personally and gave kind of a tender depiction of Jesus.
I think he did. I think he was very sincere. I think he was doing a good job as an actor. I think he was surrounded by a production that he actually accommodated.
Yeah.
But I remember moments in it where he was up there doing his job as an actor. And actually, I can think of the several things I ever saw Jeffrey Hunter in before he died, like The Longest Day and a few other films. And he was always right there doing a good job. I mean, he was a professional. But you've got we get Jesus by way of Rebel Without a Cause in the Martian Chronicles, and I'm scratching my head. And then you get George Stevens, who on the one hand directed Shane and I think Giant, and on the other hand was also a very good, very versatile directed a bunch of kind of things. And a little later, he does, what year was it now? I can't read my own handwriting, but soldier stands at the foot of the cross and says, "Truly, this was the Son of God." And it's very hard to take any of this seriously. But also, I find this very strange. You get Max von Sydow playing Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's an interesting choice, besides another being blonde and blue-eyed and as Swedish as you can get. But if you've been a moviegoer, you only know Max von Sydow when he's playing Death in The Seventh Seal.
Right.
In 1957. That's the film you think of Max von Sydow in. And so here you have him playing Jesus, looking exactly the way he looked when he played Death. I find all this stuff very surreal.
Yeah.
But there's some. Let's put it this way: when people take on this subject, the choices made for direction and writing and casting tend to be odd. Not every time. There was a miniseries in 1977, Jesus of Nazareth, and believe it or not, with a guy named Robert Powell as Jesus, and it's got some good things in it. It's a four-parter. It plugs in too many stars in roles where the star overpowers the role. You do better with unknown actors, as Jesus was an unknown actor, Anthony Powell. I'm sorry, Robert Powell. You got Laurence Olivier in there, and you got other people like that, and suddenly you're looking at the actor. You're not really looking at the story. But there's one scene where Jesus tells the story of the prodigal son to a bunch of sinners at supper, and everything gets very quiet as he's telling it, and because he's telling it to a table of people, it's including him telling it to the viewer, and it's actually very moving. You actually feel like, that might have been what it was like. And so it has its moments, but then you have, I should mention the Gospel according to St. Matthew. 1964 is Pasolini, who he was a Marxist, and he was homosexual, and they accused him of being a non-believer, and he said, "I am a non-believer with a nostalgia for belief." So it's an exceptionally sincere film. The dialogue, etc., is only from the Book of Matthew. There's no additional scene. There's no additional dialogue. Jesus is shot in kind of a frantic pace. It's like the image that comes to me, but it's like Jesus is kind of this wind-up dog going around all frantically all over the place. He sometimes almost seems like he's being shot in faster than he's going, and it's in black and white, which makes it accessible visually, because actually, if you go to various places, I haven't been, but I'm saying what I've seen in photographs of what they call the Holy Lands, and some of it was shot in Sicily, you're really seeing the kind of terrain and the kind of, you're seeing it in black and white, but you're seeing the environment that seems natural to Jesus and the time. And that film is valuable for giving that sense. You get the roughness. You get the peasantness of it. And for connoisseurs or whatever you want to call us of this kind of film, of these kinds of interpretations, that's a valuable valuable thing to have.
Yeah.
And then very famously, of course, you have The Last Temptation of Christ.
Before you move on to The Last Temptation of Christ, and while we're still in the kind of 70s era, what about the Bible? Was it John Huston?
Oh, the Bible with John Huston.
Well, he narrates it. I don't know if he directed it.
No, he directed it.
Yeah.
He directed it and he narrated it.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me.
I always thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. John Huston is a very strange director.
Yeah.
In that he does 2 or 3 kinds of films. The very direct films like Church of the Sierra Madre or Fat City or any of a bunch of films you can reel off. Very down to earth. And then every once in a while, one of my favorite films, and certainly my favorite Tennessee Williams plays as a film, The Night of the Iguana. And then every once in a while, he'll tackle something like Moby Dick and get kind of visually incoherent. And I felt that way about the Bible.
Yeah.
But what did you think of it?
I liked the part with George C. Scott. Who does he plays the guy that almost kills his son because God told him to.
Right.
Abraham, yeah.
The guy that almost killed his son.
Right. That I liked that portion of it. He just chooses different portions from the Bible, right? And then he has like an interlude in between those two things. That's interesting. But I before we moved on from the 70s, I wanted to there's a very distinct image of Jesus that kind of forms itself in culture around the late 60s and 70s that I think was pretty organic and had a lot to do with hippies and what they called Jesus freaks and I always found that to be a very pure depiction or formation of imagination of Jesus and very organic and I guess.
How do you mean by organic?
Not influenced by films and not influenced by any kind of engineering of that religious milieu.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of those Jesus freaks, I wish there was a better term for them, but
right.
Because they really, I think that movement was really pure and cool and a kind of good answer to the kind of debauchery and hedonism of that period. And I think that they actually read scripture, right? And weren't getting it from priests. There wasn't somebody. I mean, there were guys that going out there and exploiting it and everything, but I think that there was really kind of among a large group of young people, there was really a return to scripture and a kind of undogmatic and personal acceptance or personal relationship with Jesus, as they say, but that was kind of my impression of it. I mean, that's the kind of Christianity that I kind of grew up in, or around. And because
I'm glad you brought that up.
I didn't go to church regularly in my life except for those years when my grandparents would take me to church with them every Sunday in a church in California, in during the 1970s, and a lot of the the stained glass made in that time, and a lot of the iconography around Jesus that was created in those churches that were built in the 70s have a really distinct image of or imagination of Jesus and of the Bible that I've always found to be very uninfluenced by any kind of money making scheme or anything like that. Like just a very pure depiction, and but that changed so quickly in the early '80s, where the kind of like the televangelist idea took over and the moral majority idea took over, and those that hippie Jesus thing really disappeared. And I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah. Go ahead.
I ran into that in Texas.
Yeah.
When I got to Texas in the early 70s. And some of it influenced by some Christian esoterica.
Yeah.
That I had respect for, that was serious. I'm not talking about off the wall stuff.
Right.
And I met some of those people in Lubbock, Texas, and in New Mexico. And yes, they were sincere, and they really weren't influenced by the prevalent imagery,
right,
or the moral majority rhetoric. They were looking for the roots of Jesus, and I remember speaking with somebody. I wish I could remember who he was. He wasn't he and a group of people. They weren't special friends. They were just people passing through, the way people did in those days. And basically, the Sermon on the Mount is the Jesus that they loved and that they preached.
Right. The words in red in the Bible.
Yes, and they meant it, and they did mean it. And if they didn't always wash their hands and face and feet,
yeah, and
that didn't bother me so much.
And I think that that Jeffrey Hunter's depiction of Jesus had a big influence on that too. That's just my idea, but I don't know. I kind of associate that depiction of Jesus with them.
That depiction, I don't know about influence, but as we speak of it, and I think of those years, that depiction fits the depiction that these young people had.
Right.
10 years after that film.
Yeah.
That depiction definitely fits that.
Yeah.
He was playing the kind of Jesus they were trying to connect to.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
A Jesus who was not inflated.
Right.
A Jesus who
street level.
Would humbly
say,
I am the resurrection and the life. Without all the fireworks going off.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about Jeffrey Hunter's performance, in that it was humble.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that did, I could see where that could have been an influence. Mm-hmm. And even if it wasn't an influence, it was something in the air.
Yeah.
That definitely they had simpatico with.
Yeah, I think that that came out in '61, right? King of Kings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that the folk movement had an influence on that too. I would say kind of rolls up in that whole thing. It seems like a part of that. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so Last Temptation.
So The Last Temptation is another one of these movies where you step back and you really got to wonder. You've got it's 1988, and if you remember, there was a big controversy about this. I mean, and they were quote unquote Christians who were threatening to bomb the theaters and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So they took a book by Nikos Kazantzakis, the Greek novelist and poet,
right,
1955, and it's a very passionate book, very thoughtful book, very philosophic book. It's a novel, and Kazasaki's, for him, the last temptation, as I recall it, he's basically saying Christ is on the cross. All these things have happened. Kazasaki's in effect has resurrected Judas as the main disciple who is going to have Jesus killed because that's what's supposed to happen. Not as a betrayal, but as something Jesus directly or indirectly wants him to do. And so that he doesn't avoid his sacrifice. This is Kazasaki's. The sacrifice of his life. But for Kazasaki's, and Magdalene is important in this, kind of much more in the traditional, not traditional, but the original New Testament way. Also, I'm not sure about Greek Orthodox. I don't know enough about Greek Orthodox to say, but I don't know what role, if she plays Magdalene plays a different role in Greek Orthodox as opposed to Roman Catholic. But in any case, Kazasaki's vision is that Jesus is on the cross. So, in terms of physical human life, he's doomed. And his last temptation would be to wonder what it would have been like, how lovely it would have been like to lead a normal life. And to imagine himself on the cross, having led a normal life, a life of peace, a life of running his own business, raising a family, being a carpenter. And then in the book, and I believe in the film, he breaks through that desire, that fantasy, and accepts his role as the Lamb of God, the sacrifice. When it came out, certainly, it was a very original view of Jesus. It did not have antecedents that I know about. And so it's not too surprising that a Catholic like Scorsese would choose that medium to investigate, make cinema of Jesus. But at the same time, if you step back, you have the writer-director, experiencer of Mean Streets and Goodfellas, and the scriptwriter of Taxi Driver, Paul Schrader, and these are the guys who are going to try to give you Jesus, which in itself is interesting. And then you have William Dafoe as Jesus, which is a casting I never understood. No ranking on Dafoe. Dafoe's a very good actor. But it's a casting I never understood. Do you get it?
I liked it. Is it a good depiction of Christ? I'd have to think about that. I think he did a really good job with what he was given and the character that he was. I think it was a great acting job, and he hit that character, and he hit the anguish and the confusion, which I think is what the book is about, is a kind of humanizing Christ. I mean, that's the point of the book. And I think Dafoe did a good job of that. I think if you're looking at it from the perspective of, is this Christ, or is this a good depiction of Christ? That's a whole other question.
Right.
So, that's what I have to say about that. Yeah.
Now, when did you go see it? Did you go see it?
Oh, God. I haven't seen it in so long. I think I saw it on television. I didn't see it with you, no.
Because year that Jan and I and some other LA Weekly people went and stood online at Century City. I know it was Century City.
Huh.
And I seem to remember it was chilly.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on television. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But a very interesting thing happened. Because remember, there had been threats. It's one of the reasons we all went out, because there had been threats.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to, we were saying, screw it. You're not going to scare us out of seeing this picture.
Yeah.
So online, and there was quite a first night line. It was a big deal. And there was a man, tall man. He had dark hair that was graying. He had a graying mustache. Most people have mustaches, shouldn't have them, but he had a good mustache. And a peaceful demeanor. And yet he was bold, because he had a big sack, and he was going up the line, and I have it still, the sack was full of single pocketbook volumes of the New Testament called the New King James Version, pretty decent translation, with a quote of approbation from no less than Billy Graham, the evangelist, who said, makes God's word come alive in a fresh way. And it's true, it's good translation, it's fresh. And he would smile, and it was a good smile. It wasn't smarmy at all. It wasn't hopeful. It wasn't not hopeful. It was a smile. And he would look at a person on the line and say, read the book. That's all he said. Most people didn't take the book. I took it. Said, thank you very much. I'm holding it in my hand right now. It's pretty well worn by now. It's a pocketbook. Fits in your back pocket, that kind of pocketbook. About 7 inches or so long, about 4.5 inches wide, kind of thing. And less than an inch thick, and it's just the Gospels, and just the New Testament, Gospels and letters, etc. And I thought it was so impressive. The man didn't say, "Don't go see the movie." The man didn't. He was much like those Jesus people we were just speaking of. He had this sack of books, and all he said was smiled and said, "Read the book." And that encapsulated to me the best of, what can I call it, the Christian impulse. That it was strong and sweet and caring without any kind of sweetener.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget him. Read the book.
Yeah. Well, in that movie, I mean, there's the whole question of Jesus, and is he kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of different people that, some guys in some Neoplatonic guys in Alexandria kind of put together this whole Jesus myth thing, and maybe there were guys that were similar to Jesus, that they could have based him on or used in the myth that they made, because I mean the whole Jesus myth is so similar to Krishna in so many, parallels it in so many ways, and their names even parallel each other. I mean, Christ isn't his, Christos is came supposedly before Jesus, that whole idea of the Christos and all that, right? But so to make a movie about a person kind of like Christ or a version of Christ, I don't think is some kind of insult to Christ in a way. And
No, I don't think so.
and I mean, so much of what you read in the Bible is a faulty translation, and one of the things that I always thought was kind of a travesty is when he's on the cross, and in some versions of the Bible he says, "My God, why hast thou forsaken me?" And and the real translation from the Chaldean is, my God, how thou dost glorify me." And the word for glorify me is shabachthani, which that's a very powerful word. But yeah, that's just one of the things, and that makes a giant difference in the whole thing, right? Like how Jesus is viewing his situation in that instance. He's not like, questioning God and saying, why are you doing this to me? He's saying, like, how thou dost glorify me. It makes a big difference. But I mean, there's so many different translations, and so many of those translations make a big difference in the Bible. So yeah, it's just one of those things. I just thought I would bring it up because I've always thought about that. But yeah,
I think that's important.
Yeah, but what did you think of the Mel Gibson movie?
I saw the Mel Gibson movie. I'd forgotten about it until you mentioned it. Not forgotten about it entirely, but forgotten. I wasn't thinking of it in these terms. I remember seeing it in Lubbock, Texas, and people had brought their kids, and I thought I would not bring a small child to this film.
Oh yeah, yeah. Right.
It emphasizes its emphasis would really twist a kid around. I mean, I had it with The Row. Imagine watching that. I watched that whole Mel Gibson film. My God.
Yeah.
But the Jesus, aside from being tall and blue-eyed,
he wasn't tall and blue-eyed in that. He used an actual. I think he was a Palestinian guy in that role. He like the whole intention of that movie was to be as historically accurate as possible. That's why the whole thing is in Aramaic, right?
Well, yeah. Well, okay, then I got it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm putting another image in there. Okay, I get that image out. It didn't. This is weird. It didn't impress me as a religious movie.
Right. Yeah.
It was intimate in scale, which I appreciated, but it didn't impress me as a religious movie, and I wouldn't know how to classify it.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with the biblical politics of it. I'm not talking about some people thought it was anti-Semitic. I didn't think it was anti-Semitic. It was following the Gospel of John.
Yeah.
That's what John did. And a lot of people get their Christ from the Gospel of John. The politics, it was the Romans and the aristocratic priesthood.
Yeah.
And that's just how it was. But I had trouble with the Gospel of John, so this is part of my thing with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all. That was my hit on it. It didn't impress me as a religious movie. It impressed me as a
Yeah, I felt that there was the theology and the the religious ideas weren't there. They he wasn't concentrating on that. I think he talked to a lot of as many biblical scholars as he could find, the best ones he could find, and tried to make everything as historically accurate as possible. So down to like the Pharisees' robes and their hats and all those, the Roman soldiers, being very, historically realistic. But the thing that really struck me about it was he really got the reaction of the community and the ripples through the community of and the family's reaction to what is occurring to their family member and the community's reaction to what's occurring. It's hard to articulate it. It it just seemed like a really genuine depiction of people's emotional response to what's occurring. And he really he concentrated a lot on the incident with Simon too, where Simon is forced to carry the cross, and that part I thought was really good. I just thought the human reactions that he depicted were really genuine in it, and you really got the feeling of like from Mary, like her reaction, like my son is actually being, this isn't just Jesus, this is my son, right? And his brother's reaction and the how the community is reacting to it, and the viciousness of some of the people in the community, and then the obtuseness of other people like Pilate, and then the deep sorrow of other people in the community. I think he really got that well. So I don't think that his intention was really to give out the gospel, but just more of an honest depiction of what actually happened. Hence the violence and brutality too. I think he looked into a
Now
lot.
I've got to see it again.
Yeah, you should for sure. I think
Yeah, no, really. You going, oh,
yeah.
man, I saw a different picture. I got to see that picture.
No, you should,
Because
and
you're saying
concentrate on that.
exactly right.
And the brutal parts. I think he did a lot of research into how the Romans treated people that were going to be crucified, and how the Romans tortured people and things like that. Like all of that was very intricately set out in that movie too. So
Yes, when you look into the history of that, it's actually a lot worse than it's depicted in the Gospels.
right. So yeah, that was it's a really good movie. I've only seen it maybe, I think I've watched it like 1.5 times, and the second time I tried to watch it, I just couldn't make it through it because it's so brutal, and it's like too violent even for me. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't take a kid to go see it. Yeah, but yeah. Any other memories of Jesus?
No, I think that's a good conclusion.
Okay. All right.
I think that's a good conclusion.
Okay then.
You see, you have seen some biblical epics.
Yeah, I have.